Hey everybody, hey Subsourian.
Hey, Jay.
We are on the weekly mutation, Urban Warfare, Rifts of Core Hall.
Rifts to Core Hall, Minesweeper, we move unseen, and Photon Overload. This one shouldn't be too bad, and because I'm leveling Nova, and Nova basically counters this week, I'm going Nova.
Yeah, I was going to say, this one looks pretty straightforward. I'm not sure who I would like to go this week, but whoever it's going to be, I'm going to hit that prestige button and maybe we'll get it.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully it'll be a quick one-rounder. I keep saying it shouldn't be too bad, then I get distracted. Especially when you don't have mastery, it's a little hard.
Yes, yeah. So then you're kind of like, I guess, relying on me, which...
Yeah. But I genuinely, Nova, even without mastery, counters Minesweeper, counters Move Unseen, and Photon Overload's pretty not too bad.
Yeah, that's whatever. Do they get the shield, or it's just that they attack? It's just that they attack. Okay.
Just that they attack, yeah.
Gotcha.
Nothing fancy with that.
I might go ahead and try to do a prestige kick on Stetman.
Oh, okay. He'd be good this week, too. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I got him max, so...
We were talking topics, and we had a few extra things, I suppose, that we wanted to talk about. We might have to try to queue up for this multiple times, because the server's been weird, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for all that you don't know, the servers are borked, and there's no end in sight.
I was playing some earlier, and it was fine. You just have to try to click it a couple times here, and it'll work.
They say that a fix is coming soonish, but I think everyone's on vacation, so...
Right, it's the holiday week, and well, we'll see.
We will see. But yeah, so I personally think... Oh god, we're getting the global timeout error.
There it is.
There we go. But I think there's enough on that topic to stretch out until there's a new topic. So instead, Jay and I have been watching, and in my case, playing a lot of Star Wars.
Yeah, I've really been on a binge. I don't think I got my prestige, unfortunately. I was like clicking it, but that's fine. I guess we could purposefully lose so that I could get it.
Yeah, we could restart if you want. I'm fine with that.
I don't think I got it. Like, I was clicking the second yes button as it popped, and I didn't hear like the sound that I was clicking the button. It's fine. Anyway, yeah, so I've been on a Star Wars binge. You've been on a Star Wars binge. I'm caught up on The Mandalorian. I watched the final season of The Clone Wars. I finally started watching Rebels. And we've had some talks on streams in the past where it seems like we both were very into the old expanded universe and seem pretty knowledgeable and have in-depth interest in the old and the new.
So I guess we'll put out now probably spoilers for The Mandalorian if you haven't watched
definitely.
the new season. Star Wars has been in a weird place lately, especially because of I know the sequels have been pretty divisive, but I've been very happy to see how The Mandalorian's been pretty good, in terms of generally people seem to like it, and those that don't are more didn't seem to have liked it anyway, or are more critical of than it should be. I guess I don't know. There's a general positive reaction. Put it that way.
Oh, definitely. I mean, more so than the sequels. I honestly, if it has been a negative reception to it, I don't know if there's been a consistent theme to it. I really haven't seen much.
I will say, I think people are I see online the episodes people hate. There hasn't been an episode I've really disliked in this show. But when it dips a little in quality, you certainly hear about it. But I think it's just the high standard people hold Star Wars to.
Right. Well, I mean, Dave Filoni's break into that first episode he ever did of live action. It was not very. I felt that was probably the worst episode in season 1 across the whole show. But where they break when they do the prison ship.
Yeah, the break F1.
Yeah, but again, that was his first role, and he is a Star Wars treasure at this point. So he needed to get into it somehow, and so I'm glad because all of season 2, everything he directed in season 2 was great.
Dave Filoni is who I want to be when I grow up. But no, yeah. So season 2 just ended, and of course the big end reveal was that Luke shows up, which everyone was like, "Oh, it's." So we knew a Jedi was going to show up in the show. That was a given. But, Luke was always the only one that made sense to me, because he's literally, at the time, starting a Jedi Academy.
Yeah.
And the whole point is he's trying to find a place for Grogu to train, basically. So, I don't know. There was all the speculation of, is it Ezra? Is it, another Jedi we've never seen? But Luke just makes the most sense.
Well, I think with Boba Fett and Luke, it was kind of a situation where I was thinking, like, they can't do that. They wouldn't do that. And if they did, it wouldn't be good. Like, there's no way that it would turn out okay. Not only did they have the audacity to do it, but it turned out great in both instances.
Oh, shoot. I forgot. This,
I have no detection, yeah.
I have no detection, too. I was going to rely on Nova for that. All right.
It's also the Reaper comp.
Swarm forces under attack.
Or the Zealot comp, you mean?
Or was it Zealots? I thought I heard Reapers shooting.
No, it's Fleet of the Matriarch.
Okay, I have several... I have a Spore Crawler coming up.
I'm just gonna run around in your Stetson. Oh, there we go.
It is.
I'm coming.
Wait,
come on.
Do the rocks also... Can the rocks also shoot? Because I sent Zerglings up there, and yeah, they got roasted.
Now back to it.
Okay. Oh, I didn't get detection. Well. Okay, just gotta wait for that to come up.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah. First wave's always rough on this map, but...
Yeah, they changed it so that it was much earlier. Okay, so yeah, I guess, yeah, let's... Oh, it's because there was a Minesweeper up there. So yeah, let's talk more about the Mandalorian specifically, because, like, I think that's, you know, where most people's interest is right now, and I will say the thing with the Mandalorian is it feels like it was a test bed, right? And it's like Iron Man was for Marvel, and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni... Well, Jon Favreau has now saved 2 different franchises. It's pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's good at what he does. I do find it funny because it was kind of a chance thing because he met Dave Filoni, just like during Clone Wars on and off thing, and they both love Star Wars. So he's actually in Clone Wars as like one of the main Mandalorians. And then
I didn't know
because
that.
of that, yeah, he was oh god, I'm bad with names now. The one that initially works with Maul and then gets betrayed.
Oh, he's Pre Vizsla?
Pre Vizsla, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, because he voices he's the voice of one of the Mandalorians in season 1, like the one that he kind of like has a fight with, like at the end of the second episode or something.
And that one is also a Vizsla, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting because I'm like, oh well, that's a nice little Easter egg because, like, oh, Pre Vizsla was the Mandalorian from the Clone Wars. I didn't realize that it's because it was Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. Because I'm like, this is a really obscure Easter egg that they just wanted to, like, bring that guy in to do a voice here.
Oh god, the Easter eggs in that show are freaking they boggle my mind. The Star Wars Explained is a good thing of like the breakdown, especially with the Arabesh, which is the language they do. But like when they flip through, there's a scene where they flip through. Hold on, let me get this one of mine. Like a bunch of prison logs later in the season, and literally every single log is like a reference to a different prison, like that's actually showed up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The amount of effort that's put into it.
Well, it's nice to see that it's in control of people who like have that knowledge and like will really go all in. And I didn't know enough about Marvel pre the revival to know if they did similar things with that or not, or if like it was as in depth.
Like the Iron Man, like they never intended Iron Man to be like a revival or anything, or even it was just intended to be a one-off, the initial Iron Man, and then it did really well because it was a really good movie, and then it went outward.
Yeah.
Hey, let's make sure the
First Iron Man, I really enjoyed.
Oh yeah, I mean that was to look back on that, like that was like Robert Downey Jr. coming back and like having a good career after all that, you know. It's cool. That was cool to see.
Good work. Just gotta do the same.
Oh shoot, I don't have the reset on my snipe. That's not a big deal though.
It's our job to blast them apart.
I forgot how late that comes in.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, again, I think the whole thing with The Mandalorian is like I feel like now it's becoming like a hub show where I feel like the focus is really being taken away from the titular Mandalorian at this point, which I mean isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like I thought that him and like the connection with Grogu and all that was a cool, like that all landed for me. I thought they did a good job with that. So.
Yeah, definitely. And
he lost a lot of screen time, but I still thought that was pretty good.
Oh, it served as a good means to develop his character. Like he starts out as this cruel, like heartless bounty hunter, and just gradually learns. It's a story of fatherhood, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, hold on, I had a point, but I needed to clear my rocks.
Well, there's so much more to talk about regarding Star Wars, but the reason I brought up like focusing on the Mandalorian is number one, they've done everything they've tried really well, and the focus is less so on the main character and kept it more Monster of the Week, specifically to, I guess, allow the show to become like a hub show. So like all these new announced shows are being branched out and are mostly almost all of them are taking place in this New Republic era.
Right, and they seem to be trying to do like. People compare it to Marvel. I think it's closer to what they did with the Defenders on Netflix.
Yes.
Where they have a bunch of shows and they're going to wrap it together. And it looks like... So one thing that you should know about me is I have a healthy level obsession with Grand Admiral Thrawn. So the hints that that's probably going to be... Like Mando hinted that's going to be the main big bad. So I'm all for it.
It seems like it. Honestly, I feel like Thrawn is hitting the point where like he's such a fan favorite that they're gonna find a way to turn him into like an anti-hero somehow.
I mean, so that's the interesting thing is the new books they've been putting out, he is an anti-hero. Like he's not a bad guy. Like he's working with the Empire, but not like he's doing it for the sake of the Ascendancy. He has a goal. There's an alien threat that's similar to the Yuuzhan Vong from the old canon, though hopefully has a better resolution.
Oh gosh.
I like the Vong conceptually, but there is a lot of issues.
Defensive drone initiated.
Yeah, I guess like kind of rewinding though to the old canon. Like I think I liked a lot of the Yuuzhan Vong arc. The issue is like it was bounced back and forth between so many authors that like some were good and some were very bad. And that was the case with all of the old expanded universe.
I have the controversial opinion. I really like the new... What I've read so far, I've really liked a lot of the new books. I think they've done a good job keeping it pretty consistent quality. I haven't read many in a while, and I've only read a few sequel-era books, but the ones I have been pretty good.
I started with Empire's End, the first one, and the issue I had was like the weird first-person writing was I did not like that at all, and that was a terrible intro to it.
Yeah,
like
I have strong
entire
opinions on Aftermath.
Okay, yeah, it was Aftermath. That was it. Empire's End was like the second one of that trilogy or something.
Yeah, I've heard it's got better, but I didn't finish it. I have a lot of strong opinions on that. Though they did. Cobb Vanth from second season Mandalorian, he was from Aftermath, which I found interesting. It's cool to see them pull a book character.
Well, and that's where it's cool to know that like the show is being run by people that are aware of this stuff and take it into account. Like I really appreciate that.
And it's nice, and it's something I always bring up because most of my life for Blizzard's been saying, well, this from this book, in regards to StarCraft. But it's a great example of like, I mean, you didn't need to know that Cobb Vanth was from a book. It was fine. Like you didn't need to worry about it. Like if you didn't know that, your enjoyment wouldn't have been hurt. But if you did know it, people were coming in because in the book he's introduced having Boba Fett's armor. So when they started teasing Boba Fett, everyone's like, wait a second, so how are they going to work in like where it is in the books? And then they did.
Yeah, and I thought it was, I mean, again, the Boba Fett stuff, like, hearing Tamira Morrison, like, I just thought that was so cool.
God.
Like, because we haven't seen him, has he even been in anything? Like, not Star Wars, but, like, anything since, like, 2002, Attack of the Clones.
I mean, isn't he, I thought he just does weird martial arts things, or maybe I'm thinking of Maul. But, yeah, no, that's pretty much it.
I mean, it's just so cool that they're bringing these folks back, like Hayden Christensen, too. It's just great.
Oh, oops.
It's just like giving these people a chance, because Star Wars, people who lead in Star Wars films have a very, very bad track record. Like, unless you're Ewan McGregor, and I guess Natalie Portman, your career is basically over after you've been in Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, I will say a lot of the new actors, especially in The Mandalorian, like, I've really liked Carl Weathers. I thought Gina, what's her, I can't remember her last name. Cara Dune did a good job.
Yes.
They're just a lot of the new characters I've just really enjoyed, and it seems like a lot of big names are kind of itching at the bit to be in a Star Wars role. And it's good to see that because they bring like their best performance because it's something that a lot of them are passionate for.
Yes. So on the topic of these, the more recent Star Wars type update stuff, I will say some of the best Star Wars content that I've watched. I mean, The Mandalorian was good, don't get me wrong, and you get the feels when you see Luke Skywalker, a de-aged Mark Hamill. Like, that was so cool. Maybe it doesn't have the same impact to people who aren't as into Star Wars, but what I feel like if you're familiar with, like, if you've seen Revenge of the Sith, for example, and you know how the story goes, those last 4 episodes of the Clone Wars were incredible.
Oh god!
Like, you could watch you didn't have to watch any of the rest of the show. You might be confused on why Darth Maul is there, but like those last 4 episodes were superb.
It ended on the perfect note. Just
yes.
The very solemn, which is hilarious because I started in Clone Wars. Like I refused to watch it when it came out because I saw it in theaters, and the movie is like. The starting movie is actually pretty atrocious.
Yeah. Well, it's basically 4 episodes put in. It shouldn't have been a feature film.
And it's also, like, you come out of Star Wars expecting some, like, especially all the prequel stuff, it's been all these epic battles. Oh, God. Oops.
Was that?
Oh, those are mines?
where were they, though? Like,
that's
what happened?
Good question. Well, okay. Well, I've got a nuke, so I'm going to use it.
Okay.
Wretched pirates are about to get a hell of a lot more than they.
So okay, that's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, I think I just heard a lot of death noises.
I got the Nova, like my forces are gone, and I saw I only had two things on my army button. Oh, I'm getting a bit of lag.
But I would recommend, like, if you like Star Wars at all, you could probably watch those 4 episodes, and they'll make you want to watch the rest of, like, go back and actually watch the show. Because it starts as mostly a kid's show that turns into more of an all-audience, general audiences type thing. But, like, it's great. Like, I think a lot of the little subplots they have that are all fantastic.
Yeah, Clone Wars definitely, at least in my... I like the Clone Wars in general. I mean, the last arc is just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gave a redemption to Anakin in terms of... It's the era that we're always told, and even in the prequels, just told Anakin's like this big hero that everyone like. He's got a good heart and everyone likes, and the movies never show that.
Yep.
So this definitely was like just giving some redemption to Anakin as the hero we've always heard about, as opposed to or told about.
And I think Ahsoka as a character nobody really liked, and I think that's totally Dave Filoni's doing, where like he purposefully made her unlikable, and then like throughout the first like 2 to 3 seasons of the show, she became like a super fan favorite.
Yeah, it was definitely it was intentional. I'm a bit iffy on it because in my case, I know a lot of people were like, or in his case, he wanted to develop her past the flaws, but for me, I'm like, I just hate this character. I'm leaving. But yeah,
right.
It was definitely an intentional thing of they wanted to start her flawed, and gradually she develops and overcomes it. But yeah, like it worked really well. I think as the character, if you grow with the character, you learn to love them more.
Yeah, I think that like she's an example of like, I mean, it was all animated, but like she's one of the few examples of like someone who's not Luke Skywalker or Han Solo getting, or I guess Darth Vader, having like actual character development in Star Wars.
Right. I'd say Maul, not with Clone Wars. Well, Clone Wars developed a lot of the characters.
Right, exactly,
even minor side stuff. Asajj Ventress, I really like her arc. Shame they kind of had to resolve it in a book, but...
Yeah, I agree, and I think that was back when we were under the impression that Clone Wars was over after Season 5, so then they just tried to wrap up a bunch of stuff in books, and which is a shame.
I mean, even Siege of Mandalore was... We already knew it was going to happen because a book was like, yeah, this is what happened to Ahsoka.
Yes.
And it was part of that whole, I'd say, misguided thing of, well, this, like, Disney thought the prequels were super badly received, so of course we're not gonna dwell on the prequels because they're bad.
Which is hilarious because at this point, I will still say the prequels were poorly made films. They relied too much on special effects that aged very poorly, and that was what George Lucas was good at. And he deserves respect for that, of course. But I will say that I think that just in general they were poorly written, poorly made films. They weren't very, like, they were imaginative in special effects and sort of the world building, but, like, George Lucas just is not an active director, in my opinion, and a lot of the scenes were just boring. Like, they were boring and poor, and like, it's just people walking down hallways and talking, and it's not engaging or believable dialogue. Right, so that aside, like, I think we've all been through these types of criticisms. The point is, like, I think that's just the truth regarding the fact that as films, they're not great in that way. But at this point in the Star Wars mythos, the prequel era, because of Dave Filoni and the Clone Wars specifically, is probably the most interesting and best developed part of Star Wars. And I never thought that could be possible after seeing the films.
Get moving.
Of all the shows that got announced in this big thing, the one I'm probably looking forward to most, well, it's a tie with Acolyte, but Bad Batch, which is basically a Clone Wars sequel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they even have the logo morphing into it.
Yeah. God. I mean, that clones in general were all like, I know people were a bit upset that they kind of changed how clones looked in Clone Wars versus Battlefront, but I thought the way Clone Wars did the clones, all the clone episodes are worth watching. They're my favorite. So an entire show of them was what I always wanted.
Well, yeah, I think it's uncontested that the Umbara arc is probably the best arc of the show, followed probably pretty close with the Ahsoka leaving arc, but then the conspiracy, the Fives arc.
The Fives arc is by far my favorite.
It's so good, yeah.
There are a few, like, I don't cry at much, but I cried at that. I'm not going to deny it.
Well, and they even brought it back in the finale. The second to last episode when Ahsoka's living through Order 66, and I thought that, like, that's, I don't know. I guess I could see some people who are like, oh, it was chips. What's up with that? Was it not? They just weren't commanded to kill the Jedi. Like, I actually thought because now they have all of this built up clone canon and, like, you get to know some of them and stuff, that, like, that was kind of the way to make it stick the most, where, like, it had to be completely involuntary.
Yeah, I mean, and that was kind of the purpose, to get something the Jedi wouldn't suspect would betray them, like living things that served them unquestioningly, and then ended up being their undoing.
I think at this point, the main issue with the prequel era is it's still kind of just a jumbled mess when you kind of think about it. Like, it's not really, like, the overarching vision clearly wasn't built from the ground up, right? It's been retroactively fixed. And you can tell that because, like, the whole, like, Sith conspiracy and the clones and all that, like, that was all clearly done retroactively. And I think, while I do still like it, I just want to, and that sequels suffer from the same problem, no overarching vision. I hope with the High Republic, they actually have, like, a start-to-finish idea of what the heck this is all supposed to be. That's what I want from Star Wars right now.
The one thing, I have kind of the opposite problem with the prequels that I have the sequels. I love the world building and tiny details of the prequels, like all the ships, all the, like, it feels like its own lived-in era. Oh, yeah, I got Max Ascension. But, like you mentioned, the movies are very rough. Attack of the Clones, like, I despise I wouldn't say despise. I don't like Rise of Skywalker, and Attack of the Clones is still my least favorite movie by a country mile.
Yeah. Well, Phantom Menace is pretty bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, but Attack of the Clones is the ones on rewatches. I'm still like, the final fight on Geonosis is still good, but that's about it.
Right.
Yeah, but I know we're gonna get some nasty comments saying that, but oh well, it's the truth. But
seriously, the truth is the prequels were bad movies by themselves. It's easy to look back now with all the extra context from the expanded universe that Filoni has given us, and we can say, yeah, that's cool. But without that stuff, they were not good.
But that's the big thing, is the prequel era is, like, because of the world building was so good, like all the little tech, it had its own distinct feel. All the expanded stuff around it was probably the best Star Wars content in my opinion.
Yes.
All the games, most of the books. And I've noticed, because I recently got Battlefront 2 because it was on sale, and you notice this really distinctly, is like the sequel era has its really own distinct flavor, feel. Like, you definitely know it's the prequel era, and the original trilogy, of course, the original trilogy. But you get to the sequel era, and it feels like the original trilogy.
Yes.
In terms of tech and, like, feel. And I as someone who loves lore and, like, a deeper look at things, I want something with its own distinct feel. and I'm hoping High Republic does that. That's a problem I even had a bit with KOTOR and the Old Republic is I think tech-wise leaned a bit too close on things that's supposed to come thousands of years later.
Oh my gosh. I got in my recommendeds one of those Old Republic cinematics and I watched it and I just thought like the ships, like they sound like TIE fighters and they look vaguely like TIE fighters. Why does the Sith Empire that came from these like outer reaches that have been in hiding forever have basically look like Star Destroyers? Like they leaned really heavily into stuff that existed. Like, oh, Alderaan has always been a symbol of the Republic, and then the Empire came, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, come on, I want to say be more imaginative, but that's not the problem. The issue is more that they just needed more recognition for fans, and that's a bummer.
The MMO had some. I really like a lot of the MMO. Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic, I think did a pretty good job with a lot of. I mean, you still got to go to Tatooine because everyone freaking has to go to Tatooine. I'm sick of Tatooine.
Now it's Jakku.
You know, if Jakku showed up a little bit more, I would be fine with it, or give something distinct. I don't know. Anyway, monoclimate planets in Star Wars are a thing. I just accept that. But yeah, it's a shame because Old Republic had some really good writing. They explained the similar tech of, Palpatine was imitating the old Sith Empire tech, which I really don't like as an explanation, and I'm kind of glad they did away with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so High Republic's getting a show, it's getting books, and they're showing like the threat seems to be alien race as opposed to Sith, because it's supposed to be after the Old Republic where the Sith are gone. So I'm excited for that, because I think having the Jedi face a new villain and like show their role when they're not just being anti-Sith is something I've always wanted to see. So
yeah, agreed. It seems like it's more like the galaxy is like the Republic is sort of expanding and like pushing to the outer rim, and they're like essentially Viking like races, I should say, that are basically like raiding these convoys and stuff. Like that does seem really interesting. I'm curious to see what sort of like overarching threat they're going to make.
And more interesting to me is like the director's described it as like a blend of a martial arts, film and like a drama. So I don't know how that's gonna.
Are you talking about Acolyte?
Acolyte. That's supposed to be High Republic, if I recall
yes,
correctly.
Yeah. Well, just the entirety of all the things they're doing with High Republic looks really interesting to me. So I'm looking forward to sort of get in on the ground floor to kind of get a flavor on if I'll like it or not. But I suspect, again, just because it's going to be something hopefully mostly new, and and Acolyte specifically, just because they were like, it's going to be they said it's going to be like a spy thriller / martial arts series. Like, what is that going to be? I don't know.
I'm really happy they're trying weird and like just crazy ideas, because I just want new things. I like having new visions, and it's pretty obvious. Like, it's a good mix because they have Filoni and the Lucasfilm Story Group, where when you use them, they're gonna make sure that things are straight with the canon. But that frees you up to just do completely wild ideas and not break the entire franchise, basically.
And I think what they found, what The Mandalorian has shown is, number one, it's super popular. It's generated more. I think it's generated more buzz, probably mostly because of Baby Yoda. It's generated more buzz than the sequel trilogy to an extent, and it's a TV show. Let alone, it's not even feature films, and they've learned. I think what Favreau and Filoni are really good at is anchoring what you have, like bring in something new and anchoring it with something like fans are familiar with. Like, the sequels tried to do that, but obviously it wasn't super well received. I liked them, but I think what The Mandalorian did was like, here's Boba Fett, here's Luke Skywalker. Not only is it just like, here they are, but like, here they are, and they like matter for the story for this period of time.
The ballsy thing for me was, and we'll see if they actually follow this up with season 3, was getting rid of, like, ending Grogu's arc in terms of sending him off to Jedi school, basically. Now, they could bring him back for season 3 after, like, a time skip, but with the marketing force that he was, if they are actually going to, like, drop him off for a while, that's pretty big in my opinion. Like,
yes.
The cynic in me was like, there's no way they're going to get rid of him. He's going to get decide not to go, like, he's going to stick around, but no. He's running off with Luke.
I agree, because it's kind of like, I think, like, I like the fact that Bo-Katan is back and the Night Owls are back, and like, I watch it with my wife, who like is aware of Star Wars, and she liked the show and she liked Baby Yoda, but like, she doesn't, she hasn't seen any of the other media with like Ahsoka or Bo-Katan, and it all worked. But I'm like, if season 3 is like, we're gonna retake Mandalore, I don't know how that'll land with general audiences that have been roped in because of Baby Yoda.
We'll have to see. Especially because they seem to be taking, like, they're doing I think they announced they're doing Book of Boba Fett and then Season 3. It used to be Season 3 was coming next December, but now they're pushing it back. So we'll see how that, I mean, the retaking of Mandalore is the obvious direction. I just don't know, where they're going to take it from here. They've set up some small things, but maybe they'll tie it into the other shows.
I mean, the other thing, too, in Season 2... here's the thing with The Mandalorian. Like I said, it functions as an anchor show. It's a bunch of other media sprouting from it, which is great. I guess they have to introduce, like, an actual threat. Like, Season 2, when you look at it, was, like, pretty much bloodless. Like, there was no actual consequences for any of the characters. Nobody died, nobody was injured, nobody was, like, removed from the show.
Right. They obviously teased something darker, like, underneath it, with the clone experiments or whatever they were doing, and also Thrawn. But in terms of Gideon, like, nothing was necessarily lost yet, but there's still more to it.
And I guess like the Dark Troopers were supposed to be a threat, and they were completely CG, so I understand that there was probably, like, major budget constraints that they couldn't just have those, like, in a bunch of scenes mowing people down and stuff. But
I grew up on Dark Forces, so I was super excited to see them. Because
they kind of looked like the original, like when you fight the original Dark Troopers, when they're like the robots without the armor on. They sort of look like those.
Yeah. And they had the elements of the Phase, like the old Phase 3, which was an interesting thing of, like, oh, this is the only one that's a pure droid, where before that was the only one that was a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
Intentional little parallel. But no, I'm a big fan of, like, the Imperial motif and, like, that, and of course Dark Troopers. So I was that struck with me. They had a good theme. But I wish we saw more of them. I was also a little bummed because I was convinced they'd be made out of Beskar, because they were kind of building it like, oh, like, the Empire wants Beskar for something and they just have a lot of it. So, and then Luke comes in and mows them down.
Right.
It's like, okay, I guess it's not Beskar.
My crackpot idea that could be so cool for either The Mandalorian or for Kenobi, because we know Hayden Christensen's going to be on Kenobi, likely not The Mandalorian. But if they're looking for high midichlorian count blood to clone, it'd be interesting if they're, like, trying to clone Anakin Skywalker. Like, you'd think that Palpatine would have tried to do that, right? He's like, oh, well, he's in, like, a robot suit now, so let's try to get, like, a normal one back. And you think, like, if Hayden Christensen's actually going to be on the show and it's not just going to be a cameo, I wonder if, like, he could legitimately be a character as, like, an imperfect Anakin clone.
That could work. I mean, that could work. I think they've only confirmed him for Obi-Wan, but I could be wrong. Which is interesting to me, because, like, how's that going to work? Because he should just be in a Darth Vader suit, unless, like, flashbacks or something.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of. That imperfect clone could work. I'm interested with the cloning, because if they're introducing Thrawn and they're introducing Jedi cloning, that was the plot of Heir to the Empire, which people are kind of thinking they're building to.
Yeah.
So that could be what they're doing. It could be an Anakin clone, could be... Some people think it's Snoke. I kind of hope it isn't, but I've had enough of the Palpatine clone arc.
That's true. I mean, that's the one, like, it's explained where Snoke came from, but, like, it would be interesting if they actually, like, play it out on screen.
Yeah, and so as my friend, I was talking to my friend with this, and they brought up, like, the prequels, as we discussed, were pretty hated in their time. I think we're going to see, like, as the expanded universe builds up around the sequels, depending on how Disney handles it, we're probably going to see people soften to it as things get recontextualized.
I completely agree, and I'm glad that we're getting that media that's going to be the Clone Wars for the sequel era.
Yeah. They did try one show, and I'm actually watching it now, and it's okay. It's not... Rebels and Clone Wars are much better. Significantly.
I mean, I feel like I could talk forever about, like, what it is about the sequels that are weird. Like, the world building of the sequels just feels all wrong, because they remade Episode 4, and to be honest, when I saw Episode 7 in theaters, I loved it. Like, well, I didn't, like, love it, but, like, I'm like, this is a great movie. Like, it was just a very enjoyable film. But then when you step away, you're like, well... In a way, they sort of wasted one entire third of the trilogy just remaking Episode 4, which they had to do because it was a soft reboot. But what I would have, it would have been better if they would have just been like, here, this is Episode 7, and then 8, 9, and 10 will be the next trilogy.
Yeah, I could see. I liked it as a way to introduce the characters because I liked the sequel cast a lot. I thought they had good charisma.
Yeah.
They had to work with some inconsistent scripts. That's of course the other big issue is the not having one vision, switching directors. I do not know why they did that, but anyway. But everyone seems to have one movie they hate, and it's never the same movie in the sequel era.
That's true. I mean, I don't hate any of them. It's just I liked a lot of the ideas that The Last Jedi brought forward, but I think it was a flawed film. Like there were just aspects to it that really pulled me out of it. But like as a general concept, I thought it was good, and it was a really good like middle movie for a trilogy. Every character is like put against something that they need to overcome, and they grow, and that's the whole point of like the middle chapter of a trilogy. So I thought it did well in that case. But similar to the prequels, there were just specific scenes, specific dialogue, specific choices where the plot went that specific casting choices too that just like felt wrong, just felt off to me. But that's just my opinion.
It definitely, and there were certainly problems with it. I liked some of the beats of Last Jedi a lot, and it was the problem where if you didn't like the beats in Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker was great. If you liked the beats, Rise of Skywalker was awful. Like having to contradict yourself like that is just messy.
Well, Rise of Skywalker is interesting. I thought a lot of people, I remember seeing some comments like, oh, Luke saving the lightsaber when she throws it in, like, oh, it's just taking a shot at Rian Johnson because, like, he threw it over his shoulder and people didn't like that. And it's like, well, no, you could also interpret it as, like, Luke with Yoda learned that he made a mistake and now will save the lightsaber instead of throwing it away.
I definitely didn't mind that as much as like a development for Luke. It did feel a little like, hey guys, it's the Luke you remember,
right?
But, which I mean, the Mandalorian did, but this also should be Luke in his prime as like the Jedi Master. So hey,
yeah, I think too. I quite liked the Luke stuff. I understand why others did not. So I guess that makes some sense. I just wish that Rise of Skywalker didn't feel so crammed of content and had a little bit more of like an afterthought to it, like where do we go from here? And instead now it's just like, well, there's like no government, and it's just
like a final order and a first order, and
right.
How do you even expand from there? Like there wasn't a good sense of world with it, and you could argue like the original trilogy also had a pretty small scale, but I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't want to see what's going on from that point on. Basically, like I can't. My imagination doesn't run wild at the possibilities. Basically,
agreed. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I hope they don't explore that for a while.
Definitely, yeah. But again, I'm sure there's going to be a game or a book, like usually a game, maybe a book that comes out that everyone loves in that era. And there's been a few good ones, but usually they don't have anything to do with the era and are just good books. Phasma is one of my favorites, but with the new shows, they seem to be zeroing in on that very specific post Return of the Jedi era, which I think is a good familiar. Yeah. You can do different things, but it's safe enough.
Well, I suspect what's going to happen, which is kind of what they did with Clone Wars, is you know what's going to happen, right? Everybody gets blown up, or at least the capital gets blown up with apparently all the fleets. But you're going to like get all these new characters built up, and then you're going to learn like through expanded media, like, oh, well, when Hazian Prime did get blown up, all these people just happened to be somewhere else. You know that's what's going to happen, because that's what they did with like Ahsoka, for example.
Or they do with orders. There's the list of Jedi that survived Order 66.
Right, and it just keeps growing. Yeah.
Ever since the reset's gotten a little better, but like they do make a point of like Ahsoka's a very extenuating case. Kanan from Rebels was like a Padawan. The Fallen Order, you play an entire level like explaining it. So they've learned like, okay, we actually have to put effort into it. Like we can't just have them pop up, basically.
Right. Then you kind of hit the point like, okay, well then what were all these fuckheads doing? Just sitting around, not helping at these like most pivotal moments of Star Wars history. Right. They're like, where's Cal Kestis? He's just gone. Like he exists and he acknowledges he wants to try to like help, but he's just not there. So like I'm sure in the sequel that will be explained. Like Ahsoka, I think is like she's trying to find Ezra, right? Is probably how that is going to be explained, and she's getting her own show, which that will probably be elaborated on.
You mentioned you just started Rebels. How far are you in on it?
Just like partway through the first season, but I know pretty much exactly beat for beat what happens on the show.
Okay, all right, yeah. So like they do, like Ahsoka
I've just never
does
watched it, but I know exactly all the main things. Yeah.
Rebels. It's tough to recommend Rebels because it's probably my favorite by the end, it's one of my favorite Star Wars shows. I think it has my favorite interpretation of the Force of pretty much any Star Wars media. But that first season is rough because they marketed
Yeah.
it was their launch show for Disney XD, which was a kids network. So they really, really zeroed in on it being a kids show. But also everything from season 1 kind of like starts wrapping in and becomes important. So I can't recommend skipping season 1.
Yeah.
But I like the show a lot. It has good characters too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring it a little bit more. I would like to see more of an exploration on like how the Force is used and like the different people that try to use it, because like the Night Sisters, it's more like voodoo magic, which I kind of I like the idea that there are like different interpretations, and this whole like Jedi Sith thing is just one microcosm of all of it.
You'll probably like High Republic then, because they've outright stated that's a thing they're very specifically focusing on.
Okay, good. I mean, that's the one. I mean, if there was like a concept that The Last Jedi introduced, even though it was one short scene, it was when Luke was just like, the Jedi deserved to be wiped out because they were arrogant and they had like a myopic view. And like this whole idea of like, well, if you let yourself form attachments, that leads to the dark side, because you basically open yourself up to loss and fear and anger, right? And like this whole concept that it's like it's very constricting. And I thought like what Rian Johnson did do well with that writing was like it opened the door that was completely abandoned in the last chapter. It opened the door to like re-explore. Like if Rey is going to restart the Jedi Order, it should be something completely new. And again, the opportunity was there, and they just didn't take it.
That's what I was hoping, is that that would be the end. It would literally be the end of the Jedi, and something new would come up, because as that showed, like that dichotomy, it goes way beyond that. Everything's connected to the Force. There's many different ways to perceive it, and you can just make something new that's not based on the old order.
Yeah,
like a new generation comes up that's not just the Jedi. That was even a thing in the old canon. Like
I was
Luke
just
showing,
thinking
like,
that. Yep, it started with the Dark Hive. Is that what it's called? The Dark Hive trilogy?
Yeah. That was oh god, what were those things called?
The bugs. Yeah.
They showed up in Old Republic. I remember that being a cool little thing. But yeah, no, that there wasn't like, it's all how you use it. It's not like a power isn't necessarily good or evil.
I think the problem is there's no centralized, because it's not George Lucas anymore. There's not a centralized person who's going to stand up to the entire corporation now and say, this is what the Force is going to be, so this is what we have to have all of our media working towards. Like, because I think that's the issue, is like nobody feels that it's within their rights to like make that call at this point.
Yeah, I also feel like it's like you're going to have a marketing people have an aneurysm saying, you know what, we're going to throw out the entire concept of Jedi, a term that's like literally everyone on planet Earth knows at this point.
Right.
But I think Filoni at this point's probably become close to that, especially after the sequel trilogy, where if I recall, they didn't use them on the last movie or the story group to try to make their own thing, and it showed. But I'm hoping that there's like a more mandated use of the story group because of that, and thus a more focused vision, because it's pretty clear, like, yeah, I don't know, you've seen all the images. George Lucas still shows up on set for The Mandalorian just to look around.
Yeah.
Him and Filoni still talk, so it's pretty obvious, like, if he needs some direction, Lucas is still there in terms of like what his vision is on things.
It's pretty cool if you look back to a lot of the old concepts of like what even the original Star Wars was by Lucas, and it's cool to see like a lot of the weird, like I had read the other day, like apparently like Chancellor Valorum originally was like a totally different character in the original New Hope, and he was like a dark Jedi who like eventually defected to the rebellion. But that got scrapped, and then he just showed up as like Supreme Chancellor in Phantom Menace.
Well, a lot of the stuff in the shows, like even just background or small characters, are from old concepts and concept art, like the Bendu, the Ashla. Like apparently he had this very big and dense script initially, and he was told to kind of simplify it. So there are a lot of concepts that were thrown out the window. Even Mandalorian, like the spiders in that cave episode, were from super old concept art for Empire.
That's
so
cool.
They really reuse a lot of the old Ralph McQuarrie stuff or Lucas concepts, because that was a thing in Clone Wars, was he had so many concepts for the prequels, that were just like, you know what, they just pull this, and pull this one too, and pull this.
Yep.
So, but because it's was all made for the same era, it seems cohesive. So I think it's a little cool thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna pose a semi-separate scene and ask you a separate question.
Sure.
So, okay, right. We have heroes. They're hiding out in like a town. People are cooking aliens on the street. And then like there's an explosion, and then like an ATST or some walker comes out, right? And then they have to like blow it up somehow. I feel like this, and like maybe a Jedi pops out and saves them all at the very end. This formula at a very high level is like all of Star Wars, and I'm wondering like what can be done differently. Like, what can be introduced? What settings can be introduced where it's like, it's always like Outer Rim, Squalor Town, large force oppressing Squalor Town, etc., etc. I guess the Clone Wars sort of eventually fixed that, right? But
Phantom Menace, I guess, was that on a broad level, but starts out as like just Jedi negotiators. I have a feeling High Republic is gonna kind of have to be that because it's less like I guess. Because the Jedi are going to be the ones in power, so it's going to be harder for the scrappy underdog Jedi to come in and save a town unless it's like them coming. I guess it can still be them coming in from the Outer Rim and saving a town from oppressive aliens or whatnot. But it's hard because a lot of the bases of Star Wars are Western tropes and samurai movie tropes, and what you described is also a very samurai movie trope.
yes.
Bandits attack a town, samurai comes in and saves them. But I mean, I don't know, because we got some wild ideas coming up too, like the Cassian Andor show, entirely a spy thriller, which I'm really looking forward to. I think that character has a lot of potential based on what little there is.
I agree, and I feel like when you poll any average viewer, they'd be like, who cares about Cassian Andor? It's like, it's not about Cassian Andor. I think that we will come to like him because that's his show, but it's the idea that the show is going to be a semi-different genre.
I just also love Diego Luna, so I'm excited. The lore-wise, the big thing is I don't think the Separatists are made to kind of be just as much as like Dooku's toadies and have a legitimate cause theoretically throughout all the Clone Wars, and Cassian was a Separatist who went to the rebellion. So I'm hoping we actually get like a sympathetic Separatist, like we got a little bit of it in Clone Wars, but really like most of it was cackling pure evil Sith and Grievous. But I'm hoping we get a sympathetic like look at the Separatist cause because of Cassian.
Yes.
And how that reflects on the rebellion. So I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll
I was
see.
going to say, I always thought it would be interesting to see more of a transition of the Separatists into anything else, right? And or like more like Empire mopping up, which might be more like Bad Batch, like mopping up Separatists. I think because again, like they just sort of disappear, right? The war ends, the droid army shut down, and then it's just.
Yeah,
I guess just like fear keeping those systems in line. I don't know.
And in the old canon, like the leftover, because I mean it was an obvious mirror. Like in the prequels, the Empire, quote unquote, is the good guys. The rebels are the bad guys, and that gets flipped. And in some of the old books, it was the Separatists that like surplus that basically formed the groundwork of the rebellion.
Yeah. And
I think they're gonna go with that too, because I mean it's a very obvious choice. But they show up occasionally in books, like they show up in Rebels. Once in a while for a little bit, but yeah, I would definitely like to see the ramifications of that a little more. Like the Thrawn. Oh, good.
I like the idea of I don't know how much this has been elaborated on, but like so Anakin kills the Separatist leaders on Mustafar and then shuts down all the droid armies remotely, and that's like the end of the Clone Wars. And I don't think it was. Has it ever been elaborated like all the droid armies were like dismantled? Because I think it would be cool if they're. Because I know that. As the Clone Wars were ending, the concept, like, the droid armies were, like, way bigger than anything the Republic had. There were just way more of them. And I think it'd be cool if there was, like... Kind of like the original Thrawn, like the... What was it called? The fleet. Oh,
God. The Dark... It's not the Dark Empire.
That's what I was just thinking it was called.
Empire of Thrawn. Hand of Thrawn, I think. I can't remember.
But like they go and they find a bunch of shut down ships from like the last generation from the Clone Wars, and he steals a bunch of them. The Katana fleet, that was what it was.
Yeah,
and I think like they could do that with the Separatist droid armies, like a similar you could do this anytime post Clone Wars, even if it's way in the future. Like there are millions of shut down droids, and we can turn them back on, and it would just like suddenly be a horrible army that anyone could control and unleash.
Yeah,
I think that would be a really cool concept.
Yeah, I would like that. Rebels does a tiny bit of that, just a tiny, like a bit of resolution for a small sect of the Separatists, and they actually are like the Bloodlines. One of the sequel books actually hints as like there's pirates using old Separatist droids and tech, and they offhandedly mention like the new Separatists, which no one knows what that is. So, but I definitely think that's very fertile ground going to the new era, like old surplus from that war. Especially, I mean, that's a thing in real life. Old Soviet era tech shows up all over the place nowadays.
It's tough too, because like same with like post Rise of Skywalker or even like New Republic era. There's this political churn. Like there's the centrist bloc, which is a bunch of old Imperial systems that like are trying to reconsolidate executive power, which would be interesting to learn about if we didn't know exactly how it would end. At this point,
that was one. No, I liked the political situation that they showed. And I wish we actually showed it in the movies, where it's like there's a great fear of creating an empire, so they go too far the other way. And that actually explains why they're able to blow up the fleet, because there really wasn't much of a centralized Republic fleet to blow up.
Right.
So when they did blow up, everyone just kind of took their fleets and like went back into their own systems. But I don't know. We never, unless you read the book, you never saw that, which I think is the worst way you could use a book.
Yeah, I think everyone's heard that, like, oh, you gotta read the book, and that explains it.
Yeah. No, and especially with the kind of reputation Star Wars has gotten for its books there's a few that are really good.
I haven't read much of the new canon ones, though. Would you say that they're mostly hits, or some of them are really bad?
They're definitely, I mean, there's some that I really don't like. The Ahsoka book, and a few of the later ones I've really not liked. But on average, I think they've been pretty good too. Some of them have been great. Timothy Zahn wrote a new trilogy, and is writing another new trilogy all about Thrawn, which I think is pretty great.
Nice.
It's not. I don't think it's as good as the old ones, partially because he's like, I think Thrawn works better when he's the villain and not the hero of the book. But that's not here or there. It's still a good book. There's some pre-Rogue One stuff I think is really good, and a few pre-sequel books I really like. I've been behind though, so I know there's a lot that's come out that I've not done. I've been doing a lot of video games recently though, so Squadrons is really good. A very basic story, but a little fun, like tiny little, just fills in a little bit of the gaps.
I've been meaning to pick that up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Fallen Order was quite fun too.
Fallen Order was really good. I enjoyed that a lot. I just did Battlefront 2, and that story's not great. Which is a shame, because I remember them they had a book for it. Christy Golden did it, and it was all. Oh yeah, shoot! I never finished that book, didn't I?
Well, that one at least explains Operation Cinder, which I think does kind of make the immediately post Return of the Jedi stuff more interesting, at least.
I have the controversial opinion of it's probably one of my least favorite parts of the new. I really don't like Operation Cinder as a concept, because of how they've shown the Empire as people more devoted to order than the Emperor himself. So them then following that last order to like burn the Empire and thus cause disorder. But I will say the way the Mandalorian perceived it or kind of reflected on it, I actually didn't hate. So there's that.
I think they're in a bad situation too, where they can't do what the old canon did, which was like, I like the idea of the Empire fractured and there's all these different warlords that would like fight each other and stuff. Like that was, I feel like, very obvious and believable.
That's kind of what they're doing, or in Mandalorian anyway.
A little bit,
at least for now. A little, like they mentioned that it's just Imperial warlords. Like, because that was supposed to, like, that all happens when the Empire is still a functional entity. And then on Jakku, they lose officially. They sign a treaty and, like, everyone scatters. And this is all, of course, Mandalorian, of course, is after Jakku, where it's just whoever has their surplus is still around. That's also why I'm hoping, if they do Thrawn as the big villain, that Gideon's not at all connected to him, because I think that having individual Imperial warlords is more interesting.
Yeah. Well, now that Gideon's got some live action FaceTime, you know he's going to start popping up in like every thing.
I'm fine with
because that's how they do it.
That actor was great in Breaking Bad, and he was great in Mandalorian. So please use him more.
Yeah.
I like a good villain.
Well, I'm glad that I like they showed like he tried to kill himself and they didn't let him at the last second. I thought that was neat, because then like they could do anything with that character at this point, like anything.
Oh, I think he'll be back.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the Rangers of the New Republic, which I have no clue what they're going to do with that, or season 3. That's the problem. I guess that's the thing with season 3 is he's captured now. So like, who runs Mandalore? Who are they fighting now?
Right.
Like, we'll have to see. I don't actually. I speak early, and it's exciting to not know. So like, we don't need to know everything going out the gate.
I think there needs to be at least. I guess the breadcrumb is it's probably going to be retaking Mandalore, and I agree. It's good to like be anticipating something, but not have enough details that you can like get either way too excited or way too disappointed early.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in the modern era, it beats the other way people do it, which is they leave breadcrumbs, and then people spend a year thinking on it and figure out the plot, and they go, well, we can't do that now. Do something unexpected but dumb.
That's kind of how I felt about the Palpatine stuff. I was very excited about what they could do with that in Rise of Skywalker. And then, again, because they had to cram so much into that film, like nowhere near enough was explained at all.
It's okay. They announced it in Fortnite.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
Yeah. I remember thinking like, oh, he's, we're going to find out Snoke is actually Plagueis, because like the whole thing was, who was it, like the Bane lore guy on Twitter was like, oh, it's not Plagueis, and I was like, it wouldn't be cool if it turns out like it was a clone of Plagueis, but it was a puppet of Palpatine who like cloned his old master as like a cruel joke.
Oh, I also like the idea that it wasn't like, because if you notice, they never used Darth or anything. I like the idea it wasn't a Sith at all, but just something new, like outside of our traditional perception of light and dark.
Yeah, but again, because Episode 7 had to be a soft reboot, he still like had to have a messed up face, and like you're like, oh, it's like Palpatine 2.0, right? So they were already in a corner from the get-go.
And I honestly wouldn't even have minded the reveal and Palpatine returning had JJ done all 3 and thus had the ability to like go through. Mm-hmm. I think that would have been. I wouldn't have. I strongly prefer Rey as a nobody to a Palpatine, but I think that if had that all been the vision, it would have been fine. But I don't know.
Well, they're getting hit with critique from all sides, right? The most common one is like, oh, why is Rey so talented? She hasn't been trained, even though there's time in between the movie. Well, there's time between 8 and 9, just like Empire and Return of the Jedi, where in theory she's training, Leia trains her, right? And they kind of address that and like, oh, why is she just so randomly powerful? It's like, okay, well, it's because she's the daughter of Palpatine's clone, essentially. So like that's why she has innate Force abilities. And I think it kind of got tied into this weird culture war thing with it's because she, it's like people in like she's a woman, but they would never admit that, and the Mary Sue thing, et cetera, et cetera. I just find that all like really irritating to get into, so I don't want to. But the point is, I think they got hit with that criticism and took it too seriously, and then suddenly she's Palpatine.
I was looking back at forums from 2003, fairly recently, about how Mara Jade was a Mary Sue in ruining Star Wars. So just saying, same as it ever was.
Never goes away.
Same as it ever was.
Yeah. I hope Mara Jade does get reintroduced in some way. That would be cool.
There's always been strong hints, and the big thing is like everyone who doesn't know the EU knows her basically as Luke's wife. Like, and everyone's like, "Oh, how are they going to do that?" Where it's like, no, Mara was a lot more than that. Mara was actually a very like well-developed, in my opinion, well-developed character. Who eventually became Luke's wife because it was a natural course of things, because it was a popular heir to the Empire character who would hang out with him a lot. So
she trained with Kyle Katarn.
Hand of the Emperor, yeah. Oh God.
She starred in her own video game.
I know Luke makes the most sense, but when a Jedi was mowing down a hall full of Stark Troopers, I'm like, if they're going to introduce Kyle Katarn, this would literally be the perfect opportunity.
I know, yeah, that would be great.
I'm okay with I know Cal's kind of supposed to be the new Kyle Katarn of like the video game Jedi that if you get into that. And frankly, like I replayed a bunch of the Dark Forces recently. Kyle has it. If there's going to be a Mary Sue character, it's probably Kyle Katarn.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, he just like his whole life he's like, oh, I can shoot stuff really good, and then suddenly his dad's like, by the way, here's a lightsaber, buddy, and then you can just start force jumping everywhere.
The first game is him getting the Death Star plans. Uncovering this grand conspiracy, getting targeted by Vader, beating Boba Fett, boarding the Executor, and then destroying like this giant Star Destroyer by himself with a gun. It's like, man,
he's like blowing up facilities and stuff. Yeah.
It's like the entire plot of Rogue One is just one mission for Kyle Katarn.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But it was an earlier time. Like you needed it was the Doom Wolfenstein era. Things were a little more loose and
mowing down hundreds of guys. Yeah.
Yeah, people were doing it more for fun, and there wasn't like as established as a canon. That was the funny thing with Dark Troopers to me was like replaying it. It's like the big thread of the Empire is having war droids, and now looking back post prequels, like that they did that already. this shouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah.
But oh well, still a fun game. It's aged pretty poorly, but I like it. It's my nostalgia.
I wish there was a good source port for it that was like actually complete. I know that there's been one in progress that's never been fully completed, but like I think modding that game would be really fun. It's not in the Doom engine. They made their own engine for that game, which is fascinating.
The funny thing, I was looking at Diablo development stuff and stuff like the mini-map where if you press tab, it comes up over the screen. They're like, yeah, we got that from Dark Forces. Like, it was a very influential game in terms of what it developed. There was a lot of tiny things that later shooters took, too.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, and then Kyle Katarn gets stabbed through the heart, and I think he lives, but that's the last you see him in, like, the old Legends canon, I'm pretty sure.
Some of the later stuff I kind of, before the reset, I fell a bit off on. I more read the articles than.
So I made it through the 9-book series where Jason Solo becomes the authoritarian Sith leader of the GFA, and Kyle Katarn tries to assassinate him, and Jason just stabs him in the chest. But he lives, apparently. And I don't think Kyle's ever brought up again. But what I liked about that series, and this was around the time when people were like starting to be sick of these books. So in a way, when they wiped Legends, it was probably for the best. That I really liked how it was basically the Anakin Skywalker story that we didn't get was Jason Solo like having a reason to explore the Sith, and it wasn't just like, what have I done? Oh, I'm evil now. Right? He was just like, it was actually like a steady decline of the government into fascism as he was like exploring the Sith, but like you got a lot of it from his perspective, and at no point did he openly admit like I'm a bad guy. And like I think it was the Anakin story that we wanted.
Definitely. And I think it's a little easier to do in the books. Even Clone Wars, while it shows glimpses of it, I wish there was a bit more sharp, like more moments of that. But the Anakin's is still a little rough, but it definitely gotten better. But yeah, I definitely agree that I don't remember if I even read that one. Was that the one where Karen Travis had the Boba Fett
yes,
arc in
so
that?
Every third book was like totally disconnected from the other two.
I remember because Boba Fett would show up in the Karen Travis books as like to train sister name Jaina, and then just next book he's gone and it's never brought up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, but like the Jaina Jason duel at the end, like I thought that had a lot of cool ideas, but again, that was an issue with like the overarching vision. No one, maybe someone did. There must have been something going on behind the scenes. They're like, listen, Karen, like we know you like the Mandalorian stuff, but please, you have to like be consistent with our other authors.
She got in trouble with some of the reactions to that. It's a shame because she did the Republic Commando books, which were all like the first book had elements of Mandalorian, then the rest went deep Mandalorian. Yes. And that got a little funky. But they pulled some of her stuff for the Clone Wars, which was nice. Just some small elements of it. The more peacetime ones, especially.
Mm-hmm. Feels like half of Star Wars is Mandalorians now.
Well, I replaying Battlefront, I noticed this. Everything is like a reference to the sequels, and now that the Mandalorian's out, everything's Mandalorian. So it's the marketing is and like the surrounding media serves what's popular. So right now it's Mandalorians. We'll see what happens in the future. I'm hoping the rest of these shows take off, but we'll have to see. I'm sure one of them's going to be a stinker, and it'll be the death of Star Wars. So, quote unquote.
Rangers of the New Republic, 1 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean. I think that's if you're trying 1,000 new ideas, I'm sure one of them's not going to work. I mean, the Marvel series are the same way. Iron Fist wasn't great,
right.
But the rest of them were pretty good.
Yep. Man, can you imagine what the budget for this amount of shows are? Like, it's crazy. I mean, this is why all of the towns are like shanty towns because they can't have like a CG city with flying cars and stuff. It's super expensive.
Yeah, no, I'm interested to see. I'm sure the animated ones will obviously do a lot of going to the towns and all or the main cities. But yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna see smaller scale stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
which is mostly fine. But I mean, I feel like that's where Star Wars is very Star Wars. But I don't know. Oh, and the other interesting one I want to point on is that they are still doing movies, and they're doing that Rogue One movie, which we'll see how
Rogue
that
Squadron.
goes. Rogue Squadron.
Was
yeah,
it Rogue?
sorry, not
Is it Rogue One?
It's Rogue Squadron. I
Rogue
misspoke.
One is the Death Star movie.
Yeah, Rogue One's Death Star, but the Rogue Squadron one is. I was actually even talking right before it got announced how I wanted a series of it because the X-wing books were really, really good and would fit an episodic TV show insanely well.
Those
so I'm
are
interested
my
to see they did a movie.
Yeah.
Oh, they're real good.
I love like the Taking of Coruscant, the Typhara arc, and then Aaron Alston took over, who I quite liked. I mean, he passed away, but I quite liked his writing. Like, he was very humorous and like inserting into Star Wars. Like the Wraith Squadron stuff was all really cool, and like hunting down Zinj. That was, I love those. Arguably, I like those more than the Thrawn trilogy.
It's close for me. I love Thrawn as a character too much, and I just love that style of villain. But the X-wing stuff is insanely good. They're good for me in different ways.
I think that's what kind of got my love for Star Wars like past the movies was when because I started with the X-wing books, which might be why I like them more, and it was because there's no Luke Skywalker. Han Solo is there briefly because he's like leading the task group hunting for Zinj, but he's just like a side character that like pops in and makes some witty dialogue every so often. But like I loved that the authors had freedom to just take totally new characters essentially and just do whatever they wanted, and that way they could also be much higher stakes because you can't kill Luke Skywalker in a book.
Exactly. Well, you saw what happens when they kill Chewbacca.
Oh my gosh, yeah, people lost their minds.
I don't think it was intentional, but I found it very ironic. He's basically the only one to survive the sequel movies when he was the only one to die in the EU.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I credit a lot of the X-Wings books for kind of like, I mean, people liked Wedge otherwise, but I think that really got the cult following around him that it expanded him in a way everyone liked. No one really disliked him.
Yes.
And I personally like the Rogue Squadron games for the N64 and GameCube. I still think are like obviously not the best story, but they get the feel well and they're just good games. I was replaying the N64 one recently, so
on actual N64.
Solid. Yeah, I was. So we do a Christmas Ocarina of Time like thing with a bunch of friends. We did a stream this year because of COVID, but when I had it hooked up, so I'm like, you know what? I'll just play some Rogue Squadron 2. I have it here.
It's on Steam and it just doesn't work. It's really a bummer. I just I want to play it. I got it for like $2 and it just doesn't work. It's such a bummer.
That happened with I told you I replayed Dark Forces and then I went back. It's like, oh, I'll play the next few games, the Jedi Knight stuff. They do not work in the slightest.
I liked those games when I was younger, but yeah, it's a chore getting them working now.
I thought the full motion videos at the time were as good as the Star Wars movies, and then looking back, that was not the case at all.
Yeah, those Dark Forces 2 ones.
Oh, the CG is not great.
Well,
but
those games,
it has their charm.
That was kind of like in the Half-Life era, and it was kind of like between Quake and Half-Life, right? So it was like trying to build off of that like expansion into 3D FPS, and like for their time, those are pretty technically marvelous games, but they also suffered from that old style 3D FPS where like once you get past like the halfway point, everything is just a cluttered mess. Like you can't find anything, and like you're not really nothing's explained on like how to go or any sort of help system. It's just like giant maps, and it's impossible to find anything.
Platforming in first person as well.
Yes.
I'm so happy we did away with that. It's so bad.
That Half-Life era really kicked off a lot of this.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean that one, because it was trying to be a Jedi game, did a lot of it too. I can't remember if it's the later. I know Jedi Academy I thought did pretty well with a lot of it.
A lot of people are familiar with that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I should try to see if that one runs, because that one was pretty good, I remember correctly. It's been a while.
That one had like a really bustling multiplayer scene.
Yeah, I used to play its multiplayer modes a lot. I think that's the one where you could be a droid Jedi, and I just love doing that. because it was just avatars, not like who you. Yeah, so you could be a C-3PO with a lightsaber.
I feel like
No,
we could keep talking about this for like hours.
Yeah, but I don't think you want to make a 30-part series on this.
Well, we can always revisit it as more Star Wars comes out. I'm going to try to get caught up on some of the books.
Definitely, and I highly recommend to you and everyone who watches. Squadrons is really good. It's a good flight sim. It's a decent story for a video game. Fallen Order, of course, and as always, Timothy Zahn's great, and the Thrawn trilogy, new Thrawn trilogy is pretty good. So check those out too.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess we'll wrap up here. I'd like to hear what you all think about Star Wars. Tell us why we're wrong about some of our opinions. Tell me why. Well, I know the prequels aren't well received, but Revenge of the Sith is actually pretty good. No, it's not, okay? It has some cool lightsaber duels, but they go on too long and lose their emotional impact. I'd like to hear you change my view in the comments.
I like Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, I like it. I'm just saying as a film, it's just seriously, the ending is like all the battles are cool, but watch every other scene. It's people sitting on couches talking. You can't remember what they're talking about. The only lines you remember are the ones that you see on prequel memes.
Yeah, I remember it because Clone Wars brings some of them in. That's how I remember them.
But it's just all those dialogue scenes. You just like, I know what everyone thinks. Like, we just want to get this over with so we can get to the next flashy part. It's just as a film, like judging from like a film standard, not a Star Wars standard. It's not there, folks. I'm sorry. So, tell me why you're mad about that opinion. I want to hear it in the comments.
Rebels and Clone Wars are great, and if you don't like Rebels, I just like you as a person. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I love Clone Wars. I'll let you know how I feel about Rebels in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Like I said, just give it a chance. It's got a very rough start, but
okay.
I think it definitely picks up.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we'll wrap this up here. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week for a new topic.
See ya.